When we watch global politics on the news, it usually looks like a game of chess. We see a series of fast, aggressive maneuvers, sudden tariffs, and leaders constantly looking to deliver a direct knockout punch. But according to geopolitical analyst and former diplomat Professor Kishore Mahbubani, Beijing is operating on a different set of rules. If you look at this Go board, you see the mechanics of that strategy. In chess, you attack the king for a quick kill. In Go, you slowly place pieces across the grid one by one. You accumulate assets, restrict options, and control the board. Beijing applies this principle to its foreign policy. They look decades down the road, anticipating Western moves and positioning themselves to neutralize those threats before they ever materialize. The ultimate objective here is not military conquest. It is to engineer a state of global economic dependency so deep that other nations simply cannot afford to act as an enemy. In the current geopolitical landscape, leverage comes from absolute control over the supply chains that keep every major economy running. Look at the massive scale of raw material extraction in places like this open pit mine. These are rare earth materials, the foundational elements required to build virtually the entire modern world. This graphic reveals the bottleneck. While China controls roughly 60 to 70% of global rare earth mining, they handle 85 to 90% of the actual processing capacity. That massive 90% processing chunk flows directly into the production of our daily smartphones, the batteries inside electric vehicles, and highly advanced military systems. Because these materials are foundational to modern industry, this concentration of processing power creates a point of extreme vulnerability for the global economy, serving as a powerful deterrent against hostility. Advancing up the supply chain reveals a manufacturing landscape that functions as a hyper-integrated ecosystem. This bar chart puts that scale into perspective. China is responsible for over 30% of global manufacturing output. That surpasses the combined production of the United States, Japan, and Germany. The strength of this production base relies on the tightly packed network of specialized parts suppliers, logistics hubs, and trained labor existing in one place. Even massive global tech giants remain locked into this structure. Replicating that exact density of suppliers and skilled workers anywhere else on the planet is incredibly difficult and incredibly expensive. All of those finished goods eventually have to be pushed out to the rest of the planet, requiring massive infrastructure to handle the global distribution. This map illustrates the final layer of dependency. Right now, China sits at the center of these trade routes as the largest trading partner for over 120 countries worldwide. If you sever those connections, the blowback is immediate. Those connected nations would instantly face job losses, halted economic growth, and surging consumer prices. At this scale, economics and politics merge. Nations hesitate to challenge Beijing politically, because doing so directly threatens their own domestic survival. Allied countries can work together to isolate a rising power through a strategy known as containment. This is exactly the playbook that the West used successfully during the Cold War to choke off the Soviet Union. But applying that strategy today requires a highly coordinated global effort. Because the global economy is embedded within Chinese supply chains, organizing that isolation falls apart. Asking the world to cut ties with Beijing means asking them to damage their own economies. The traditional Cold War playbook is broken. We see the results of this dynamic clearly across Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America. When these regions face pressure from escalating trade wars, their response is uniform. They choose neutrality. For them, securing trade and infrastructure investments completely outranks geopolitical loyalty. It is a methodical accumulation of global influence, expanding quietly across the board until the available space is firmly locked down. This is the direct result of a deliberate, top-down strategy meticulously executed over decades to build a resilient national defense. Beijing wins the geopolitical game by creating a new global system where disconnecting is simply the hardest move of all.